Hey, everybody, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to pick up physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. So, 2025, getting into it. It is a new year, and I am working on old stuff. So, I still have not finished this piece. And I thought to myself, maybe starting the year off, maybe I should dive into maybe doing thumbnails for the covers for my next comic, or just having something new to show. But I think in sticking with my theme of the unsexy part of creativity, sticking with projects that are taking a long time, trying to show the difficult, challenging, less sexy part of the process, I kind of said, you know what, let's just the whole hardest part of almost anything is finishing. So I thought, let's just work on finishing this piece. And we'll see how far I get in this session. But as opposed to bailing and going and doing something else, we're gonna truck on. We're gonna keep heading in. So let's see here. I hope everyone else's year is off to a pleasant and interesting start. Let's see here. So I need another layer on top of the figure, on top of the laundry basket. So let's see here. Make sure my brushes are the brushes I want to be using. See if I can find some decent reference. All right, that's probably enough. Let's see here. Hey, my buddy Jim Lujan in the chat says, "Hey there, buddy. Question for you. If someone asks you, where are you from? What's your answer? Curious where you grew up." All right. Well, I usually will tell people that I was born in New York, Long Island, but I grew up in Southern California. Because I really don't think you can claim the East Coast unless you stay there at least through middle school. So, yeah, I basically grew up in the Inland Empire, a town called Upland. And yeah, just lived there until I went to college. And then after college, I just bounced all around different places in LA. Um, Depending on where I was working, I always tried to get to I always tried to find an apartment that was close enough to where I was working that it minimized my commute time. Um, Living close to work was just a priority in the sense that it allowed me to, spend more all of my time when I wasn't at work doing art stuff, doing fun stuff. That kind of changed once I got into the toy industry because after moving to the Valley, which some people hate the Valley, but living there, I found that the rent was more affordable than most of LA. And that's kind of changed over the past few years. But at least when I was in my mid 20s and early 30s, living in the Valley seemed like a better balance in terms of like cost of living compared to everywhere else in LA. And yeah, a lot of people hate living in the Valley because it gets super, super hot in the summer. That is all true. But the things that made people dislike the Valley are also the things that I looked at and said, well, this will make it less crowded because not as many people want to live here. So, I mean, the fact that you could live in the Valley and actually find decent parking at any given day, for the most part, that helped a lot. Just being less congested. When I say that, it's not like there's no traffic in the Valley, especially like in the past few years, it's gotten almost, to the same level as the rest of LA. But by comparison, if there's like 15, 20% less traffic, if there's 20% more parking in LA, that's a big difference in terms of being like completely crammed in like sardines versus just kind of crowded, kind of busy. So yeah, I would say that is pretty much that's the long-winded answer in terms of where I grew up. Yeah, in the Inland Empire, it was, pretty like just um, suburban childhood. Lived in a pretty ethnically mixed town, so it was probably about maybe 50% white, and then 25% Latino, and then probably like the rest was like a split, maybe 13, 12% Asian, 12% black, and then a few other ethnicities mixed in. But it's a pretty culturally mixed area that I grew up in. Pardon me, got to sneeze. In fact, Jim, it was funny when we met. I had already moved out away from that area, but I was coming back regularly to visit friends and just other artists I knew that were around that area. Because I want to say that it was that animation film festival that was in Claremont. I think was the first time that we met, but I know it was either that or someplace in Pomona when they had a. I feel like the art gallery shows that were going down in Pomona. I think we had already met them when we hung out then, like ages ago. But yeah, yeah, quiet, chill, suburban place for a kid with a wild imagination to get into trouble. I see Omar is in the chat. Hey, Omar, how you doing? Good to see you. Happy New Year. By the way, Jim, I am still totally up for doing a live stream where I just come and hang out and chit chat with you on your channel while you're just working. So we'll have to figure out what will work schedule wise, or if instead if you decide you want to do it on my stream. But however you want to do it, I am down for it. I am. It feels like I'm getting out of the relentless crush of freelance work that I had at the end of last year, which I mean, always good to have more work, have getting them bills paid, but you know, when it starts making it impossible to do any artwork, personal work, that's not fantastic. So I seem to be getting things into a more manageable stage. Let's see here. Jim says, "I think you and I met at the San Gabriel Comics Festival many years ago." Yes, yes, yes. You know what's funny? We were cleaning out a bunch of storage and moving a bunch of stuff over the holidays. So my holidays were like absolutely no rest whatsoever. But one of the things that has, well, it's making the move. I just haven't brought them up yet. But I still have my Ghettomation DVD that I bought at the San Gabriel Festival. So I've got me a classic deep cut Jim Lujan DVD. But yeah, I had completely forgotten about that festival. Long time ago. All right. Let's see here. I don't know if it's just a matter of me being loopy, but it definitely feels like I'm less chatty. Like this is, I think maybe it's just the year of my brain being a little bit slower and more rambly and figuring out what I'm doing as I'm going. Because I don't know if there's a lot to say about this piece. This is very much just going through the process of trying to make little dashes of color feel like bits of fabric blowing in the wind. I might be getting a little bit too caught up in refining details. I need to pull back out a little bit. Okay, I guess we're getting into the deep cuts here. So Jim says, I'm going to keep going. How old were you when you first tried boba, and what are your feelings on it? Hold on. Got to blow my nose. I absolutely need to get an air purifier for my studio because my allergies are kicking up like nobody's business. All right. Well, it is an unpopular opinion, but I am not a fan of boba. It just doesn't. I mean, I don't like tapioca. Um, Usually, I'm a hot tea drinker as opposed to an iced tea drinker. The little balls of tapioca, even with the different flavors, it never sat well with me. I want to say the first time I tried it was probably, I don't know, hell, like 20 years ago. I was living in Alhambra, and I think a girl that I was dating at the time, like she tried it, she really liked it. She says, "Hey, there's this boba tea place down the street," and I am very much like, "Oh, I'll try anything once." So I was like, "All right," ordered one, sipped on it, didn't like the little balls. The taste, I was like, I'd rather have like a smoothie from from Jamba Juice or just some regular fruit smoothie. It didn't take. That said, I've had it a couple of times since, or I've had sips of my wife's boba. Just she's like, I'm really enjoying this. Do you want to try some? And I'd have a sip. Um, I don't go around telling people that boba is terrible because boba is incredibly popular and people love it. Um, but it's not for me. I gave it a shot, didn't do it for me, and I'm like, all right, life goes on. So that is my fascinating boba feels. I'm wondering, just trying to think in layers here. Wondering whether it's a good idea. Just see if there's anything else that I can move to this higher level. Let's see here. You are really taking this Ask Me Anything seriously. I changed the name of the streams to AMAs because I just figured I don't even know what to call it other than just me hanging out drawing. But you know what? We're gonna ride on this. We're gonna ride on this. All right. What movie makes me cry? Um, there are a few, but the first thing that pops into my mind is actually the Denzel movie John Q. Um, it's directed by Nick Cassavetes. There's a deer outside my window. um, the premise of the movie is that Denzel's son needs a heart operation, and the insurance company won't pay out on it. So he takes the hospital hostage in order to try and force them to do his son's operation. And basically, it's kind of like Dog Day Afternoon with heart surgery instead of gender affirming care and bank robbery. But in the end, all of these things, first, the insurance company won't pay to do it or won't allow to do it. And then finally, the doctors are willing to do it, but the heart that they have for the transplant turns out it's not a match. And in the end, he decides that, well, I don't know how it would have worked because I think his heart would be too big for his son's chest. But he decides basically that he's going to kill himself so they can take his heart out of his body and put it in his son. And spoilers because it's an old movie, but there's like a motorcycle accident somewhere like in the course of the story. you find out that the person that's in the motorcycle accident, they're a blood type match and they die. Their heart is able to be used for the transplant. But the part where he's like saying goodbye to his family and getting ready to kill himself so that he can give his heart to his son, I get choked up just thinking about that. That part just gets me every time. So I'm almost, honestly, I am just in talking about it now, getting a little caught up there. It's funny. You asked what movies make me cry. When I think about stuff that makes me cry, I think about scenes actually in books that make me cry. And it's I have a really good relationship with my dad. I'm very lucky in that love the hell out of both my parents, but I have a really good relationship with both of them. Um, Father son stuff tends to really get me choked up. And in terms of books, there's a scene in Invincible. In I don't know if it's in the TV series because I haven't watched this series yet, not because I don't like it, just haven't made time. But there's a scene in the graphic novel. I think it's like issue 12 in the comics because I think it's the scene that ends the first hardcover collection, not like the omnibus collections, but the when they started publishing them in like 12 issue hardcovers. And it's the scene when when Mark is fighting his father, and his father is just wailing on him, beating the living crap out of him, telling him, "Why are you fighting to defend these humans? They are insects." Is like, look, your mother's going to die, all of your friends are going to die, everything you know is going to die. Like in 500 years, what are you going to have left? And he just looks up at him. Like at this point, it's like his son is like laying beaten down, he's bloody, and he looks up at him and he says, "I'd have you, Dad." And the dad is just, that freezes him in his tracks. And it's like the son is bleeding and in tears. The dad is in tears. The dad just stops fighting. All the fight goes out of him and he takes off. And there's something just deeply moving about that moment for me. So let's see here. Jim says, "I'm trying to make you cry so your nose will run to help your allergies." That's kind of like trying to scare somebody if they've got the hiccups. It's an interesting tactic. We'll see. Let's just yank all the tears. Let's yank the nose hairs. Let me get some onions out. Let's go for it. And hey, James is in the chat. Says, "I'm here now. I guess Facebook is being difficult, huh?" Well, this is interesting with Facebook. There is something about this particular image because it has a woman who, you know, you she there's no genitalia showing or anything, but the fact that she's naked in a laundry basket, for some reason Facebook continues to flag this as sexual content. And what I have to do is after the stream, I go in and I appeal. And I have to put a thing say that it was wrongly removed. And then usually a week later they put it back up on Facebook. But for some reason, this particular piece, Facebook just tags it as sexual content. And I mean, it is a woman, it's sexy, but I don't think that it's anything that should be inappropriate or any more inappropriate than anything else I've seen on Facebook. But they always tag this, and I think that they probably just took that particular stream down. As far as I can tell, like on my dashboard, it looks like I'm still streaming to Facebook. It says that I'm live there, but a lot of times it'll still, it'll just pull it from there. So that's what I'm guessing. James says, "I think I feel sad more than I cry when I watch movies." Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big crier. There's lots of movies that will get me down or get me, not down, but emotional. They'll elicit deep, sad emotions from me. But I don't necessarily cry that much at anything, books or movies or TV. Let's see here. I want to put this down here. Okay, that kind of helps. So I'm constantly jumping around here trying to make sure that I'm not drawing. If I'm drawing objects that are overlapping while I'm at this, let me see if I can find some socks in here. Don't really see any socks. I mean, I don't know. I figure people do hang up their socks to dry. I'm gonna come back to the chat in a second. Just trying to keep this moving. But it's this constant dance of overlapping forms and creating the level of energy that I want this piece to have. So I'm constantly checking the layers and back, oh wait, is this going to be overlapping this? Does this flow well? Do I need to change the colors here? All these things. And I actually need to thin these out and make them feel more like women's socks, which are going to be longer, more elegant than men's socks. In fact, this just the foot alone, that's like a man's foot. This should be, the heel should be down here, and this should be a little bit more dainty. Not super dainty, but just feeling more like a stocking, something that's a longer, more elegant. Whereas the first one I drew was like a men's gym sock. All right. Back to comments. So James says, handling the undead, which came out last year, is sad because it deals with grief and loss. I'm glad I got around to seeing it, though. Now, that's interesting. I have not heard of handling the undead. And my wife told me this morning that she had just had a dream. She said it was her first dream about zombies, which I found not amusing because I don't want to make fun of her, but I found it just an interesting contrast versus I've been having dreams about zombies since I was a child. And I've told her many of the dreams I've had, which she just would look at me with horror, like, how do you ever sleep? And I'm like, well, I've gotten used to dreaming about horrific imagery. It's part of being an artist, and it's part of being an artist who draws dark subject matter and dark themes. When I sleep, I see horrible things. I mean, knock on wood, I'm lucky that it's something that just my brain is. I think it's my brain's way of processing anxiety. It's not that I want to be scared or I want to look at the world as a terrible place, but I think all of us have day-to-day anxiety we have about work, about family, friends, society. And for me, horror is the way that I process it. I've not seen Nosferatu yet. My wife and I don't go out to the movie theaters that often, so I think we're probably going to wait until it's streaming. But I really am looking forward to it when it is available for streaming. I would say out of everything that's come out over the past year, that's probably one of the ones I'm looking forward to the most. But again, since it's doing so well in theaters, it probably won't be on streaming until like maybe February or March. So it'll be a few months before I see that, but I'm looking forward to it. Let's see here. Hey, Corey Kerr in the chat. Hey, Corey, how you doing? Happy New Year. Corey says the Invincible series is great. It says Durant gone a candle to the books, but it's amazing. I think I'm not sure. I'm sure it's a typo, but I think that the sentiment is that it doesn't hold it just doesn't hold a candle to the books. That's the problem with typos. If AI wanted to be useful, AI could just simply look, instead of auto-correcting crap, why not make AI that actually looks at the context of what you're saying and says, oh, they mean this, and actually get it right. How's that? Instead of trying to make pictures, just make autocorrect better. How's that? That's a great use for AI. Let's see here. Herman in the chat. Good to see you, Herman. Says, what's good, Jeremy? In the chat, better late than never. Hey, I'm glad you're here. Like I said, I was off for a couple of weeks. Holidays were crazy. Did not get anywhere near as much rest as I wanted. It was kind of I went from an intense month of work schedule to an intense life maintenance, packing, decluttering, getting rid of stuff. It's crazy. It was crazy. But I'm here and I'm glad to be back with you guys again. Getting back to the regular art process. So James says, yeah, I'm not sure about nudity on YouTube for that matter. It seems that illustrations are okay, but photographs aren't. I don't know. I try to be careful when showing off physical media that has artistic depictions of nudity, though. Well, I think that for YouTube and Facebook are very different in that if Facebook sniffs of anything that might be construed as nudity, they will shut you down for it. YouTube will as well for live streams. Now, if you make it where it's not live, you just upload it and you mark it as 18 and over, then I mean, honestly, like I remember on the Cartoon Kayfabe, there were times when they were looking at some comics that were full-on adult comics. So you can have, I mean, not straight up porn, but if it is something that has like an exposed breast or a butt, you can still have that on YouTube. It just has to be an 18 or over video. Like for instance, the Proco stuff, Proco will have drawings that are, just figure drawings. So there will be nudity in it. But you notice, I don't think Proco ever does live streams, or if he does, it's rare, or maybe they'll do it live and then with their community and then upload it later. But yeah, and to be honest, I mean, it just seems ridiculous to me that society is so puritanical about sex, and yet violence is so prevalent. Now, I don't have any problem with violent content either. I think that all content, parents should just be responsible for what their kids are seeing and, be aware of what they're consuming. But that said, the idea of either sex or violence being just being censored, it just seems ridiculous to me. I mean, obviously, we all got here through sex. And I think that as long as, its depictions are consensual, even if whether they're conventional or the idea of what any of us think should or should not be a sexual relationship, as long as they're consensual and not harmful, I just feel like it's just a matter of making content age appropriate. That's all. And if anyone thinks that they're going to stop kids from seeing inappropriate content, I mean, let me put it this way. Way before the internet, I was finding ways to get access to material that I should not be looking at. So I think society would be better off if we spent more time actually talking with young people about sex and sexuality and talking about the realities and emotional consequences, emotional and medical consequences of sex, versus just saying, don't talk about it, don't think about it, don't look at it. Better to actually educate young people about it than just tell them something that they're absolutely not going to do. But then again, I don't have kids, so I also respect the fact that I might feel very, very differently if it were my own children. That's a whole nother aspect to it. So I can talk a big game, but I think it's different when it's actually going on in your household. Let's see here. All right, back to the chat. So Herman says, I see you're still working on the image. It's looking nice. Yeah, it's coming along. I'm pretty happy with it. And I kind of I talked about this at the beginning of the stream. I was tempted to work on some thumbnails for some comic book covers just so that you guys wouldn't get bored. But this sticking with a piece that takes a long time, to me, that is one of the things that, you know, we live in a world full of time lapses and people making amazing speed paintings and making amazing art in like one sitting, and it creates the idea or the myth that everyone can do that or that every piece is like that, instead of seeing the piece where you're working on it, where you're pecking away at it for weeks and months at a time, moving it along an inch at a time, just tiny little bits. To me, that is more realistic of the artistic process. And I guess I want people to feel like if something is taking a long time, it doesn't mean that they're a bad artist or that they're failing. I think that, I mean, we all talk about the fact that social media and looking at everyone's highlight reel creates a level of anxiety and dissatisfaction with our own work, and showing the hard parts and saying, it's okay. This is supposed to be hard. Or not hard. This is supposed to be challenging and time consuming, because a challenge is a good thing. And learning to have patience to stick with a piece that's taking a long time, or even a piece that goes in a few different wrong directions and you have to start and stop and start and stop and redo parts and undo parts. I think that it's healthy to be aware of that. In fact, I'm going to make notes. Let's see here. Just making a little note to myself. All right. Let's see here. Okay. For everybody in the chat, you guys can play along. Jim's got a good one here. It says, for everybody, finish this. In 2025, I want to do more blank and less blank. Okay. Let me think about this for a minute here. Well, let's see. In 2025, I want to do more. I want to do, pardon me. I want to do more comics, and I want to do less procrastinating. That's real easy, the procrastination. There's probably a better answer for things that I want to do. You know what? Let's say this. In 2025, I want to do more action and less research. I tend to, research is very, very important. And for anything that I plan to do, I will do deep dives. I'll subscribe to newsletters on the subject matter. I'll create a folder of notes. I'll create reference, like I'll have bookmark to sites that are references on the thing that I want to do. And I will literally make a project out of learning how to do whatever it is I'm trying to do. And then never start. And that's something that if I really, more than anything, more action, less research. Thank you for that, Jim. It's almost as if you're an insightful guy or something. That's a good one, actually. That's a very, very good one. Let's see here. James says, oh yeah, I was going back to the conversation about dreams. He says, dreams in which I fall are weird for me because I can feel the impact as the dreams come to an end. You know, I had a dream one time that I was falling, and in the dream, I was aware of the idea that I have lucid dreams. I don't have them all the time, but when I was younger, like in high school and college, they were constant. Like half of my dreams, I would be aware that I was dreaming. Anyway, I was aware of the idea both that I was dreaming and that I was falling. And if that whole idea that if you hit the ground in a dream that you'll actually die, I was aware of that idea. And in the dream, I hit the ground, my body craters into the ground, my soul flies out of my body and keeps flying down into the earth, flying down for what feels like an eternity. I land in hell. And in hell, they're like, well, you're not supposed to be here. So we can't keep you, but we're not going to help you leave. They just point like you can go out that way. Just, you're going to have to walk. And then the rest of the dream was me walking for what felt like 100 years. Like at first it was like screaming, walking like Dante's Inferno, walking through like past big demons and lava fountains and people being tortured and just walking. Then it slowly gets a little bit less quiet, more like in the outskirts, and then just weird creatures scurrying around like rats in an alley, walking past. And then it went from less of like this empire of hell into just caves. And then eventually I'm just in a tunnel. And then eventually it's just a dark glow behind me. And now I'm just walking in the dark and walking uphill and walking and walking. In the dream, I woke up exhausted and pissed because it literally felt like I woke up like I had been walking for 100 years. And I just woke up. I was like as if it like the way I woke up was feeling as if the dream was true, that I had fallen into hell and had to walk all the way back. And when I got back, I returned at the time when I would have woken up. And that was, like I said, I have really, really weird ass dreams. Let's see here. Corey says, Happy New Year. Let's see here. I am about like 10 minutes behind the chats in the comment. So let me try and catch up here. And hey, Paul Pate in the chat. Hey, gang, I'm here. Good to see you, Paul. Happy New Year. Chris is here. Good to see you as well. Happy New Year. So let's see here. Herman says, I'm looking at your writing comics video. It was detailed, but my brain is slow. I have to watch it a few more times to get it. Hey, no problem. I mean, it's a deep dive video. I hope that it's helpful to you. And by all means, if you have questions, you can always post on the comments, because I still check the comments on old videos. You can post a comment there, or you can just post a comment on this video. If you have any follow-up questions on the video, by all means, feel free to ask. I've been meaning to take that video and turn it into some sort of course at some point. And it's literally just been the fact of not having the time and the bandwidth to do it. But that's going to happen at some point. Let's see here. Paul says sex and violence. My faves, not together though. I don't know. I mean, I've read a few good BDSM comics. And I think the movie, I mean, it's not violence, but it's like spanking and naughty stuff. Have you ever seen the James Spader, Maggie Gyllenhaal movie, Secretary? It's about an abusive boss who has a BDSM relationship with his secretary. And there is a scene with two people completely clothed that is one of the sexiest things I have ever seen in a movie in my entire life. If you have not seen Secretary, I highly, highly recommend it. I mean, if you like spicy, definitely go see that. If you're a little bit more reserved, not so much. But because it is a very, very spicy ass movie. Not NC-17 spicy, rated R, and it's definitely a sexy romantic, I'd say as opposed to a romantic comedy, it's almost like a well, I guess you could say it's kind of a BDSM romantic comedy. There's definitely some humor in it, but I would say worth checking out. Let's see here. In the whole thing about content and parents just being aware of what their kids are seeing and actually having conversations with them. Paul says, "I have 5 kids, and I still agree, Jeremy." All right, glad to hear. I mean, I'm aware that I may be speaking out of pocket just by not having the same context that other people may have. But I appreciate the cosign. And Dylan in the chat. Hi, Dylan. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Let's see here. Yes, Dylan says Happy New Year as well. Let's see here. So James says, I miss my Bay Area art group since I don't live in San Jose anymore. I was glad they had to get together. They had to get together over Discord last week, though. The theme was green, so I added some color to my drawings. You know, it's funny. I have really fallen off on there's a Discord hangout for a group of artists that we used to hang out in person in LA. And I have been trying to, well, you know, one of the guys has brought up that we definitely need to get back to hanging out and catching up. And I have just not been on top of that and need to get on top of that. So it's something that, you know, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to hop on there and just say, hey guys, I'm finally, I don't want to say finally free because I still have so many things I need to do that I have not done, but it's something for me to get back on. And I also go to an in-person figure drawing class that I've stopped going to over the past 2 months because of work schedule. And I want to get back to that. So again, just not enough hours in the day. I just want to spend them all being creative. Let's see here. Corey says, parenting is freaking rough, man. I'm more concerned with the addiction, anxiety, manipulation from phones and social media, but adult content is concerning as well. Like you said, open conversations are big. Yeah, I mean, and like I have a nephew, and I would definitely be up for sitting down and having conversations with him about relationship with girls. I don't see him often enough, but you know, I feel like those conversations can't be easy. Not having gone through it myself, I feel like it can't be easy. But I also know that nothing in my life that's been worth doing has been easy. So that's more of a thing where I'd rather. But also, I have a weird personality in that I tend to lean into the awkward and uncomfortable. Like I would probably be the dad who would sit down and just be like, all right, yeah, tell me all of the horrible things, ask me all of the questions. Like putting on a movie that maybe would be kind of weird and slightly like maybe a movie that doesn't have sex but talks about sexuality and being able to be like, do you guys have any questions? You want to talk about any of the stuff that we watch? You know, like even something like the movie Easy A. The idea of Emma Stone's character, you know, having an affair with a teacher, and because of that, you know, getting an A for that. I haven't seen the movie. I've only seen the trailer, so I assume that's what it's about. But stuff where it talks about adult, that's a thing. I think actually the safest route, I think, is having things that deal with adult themes and actually being explicit. So at least it kind of opens the door for a conversation. You know, I'm the type where I'm like, all right, let's have the difficult conversation. Like, just do it. Paul says, same, Corey, well put. I'm going to jump to just because Corey said, yep, if your kids don't feel comfortable talking to you, you're toast. Yeah. Definitely. Well, I mean, it sounds like you guys are both like you're in there, you're doing the hard work. You know, that's what it takes, you know, being a dedicated parent. Let's see here. James says, my green paint markers dried out, but they had caps on them, so maybe they weren't stored in ideal room temperature. Well, you know what? I find that markers, I don't really even use markers anymore. Usually if I'm doing traditional media and I need color, I will either use watercolor, or what I'll do is I'll use acrylic, but I'll intentionally thin it down. Now I won't water it down, but I'll thin it with medium. Because that way it doesn't break up the binding of the actual paint, so it doesn't get splotchy, but it still makes it more transparent, more translucent, to allow like whatever you're painting over to come through. So yeah, I figure it's one of those things where paint with the caps on with the tubes, they'll last longer than a marker. Doesn't mean that they won't still gunk up and eventually get a tube that's just a tube of a brick of plastic, but give a chance to do more. I mean, to last longer. So on Jim's little Mad Lib question, Paul says 2025, more exercise, less procrastinating. Okay, yeah, we're definitely on the same with that. I mean, everyone could use more exercise. My wife and I were on a pretty good routine of going for daily hikes, and in fact, I'm gonna see if I can talk her into going for a hike after the stream today. But again, things that fell through the cracks at the end of the year just went nuts in terms of schedule. Let's see here. Dylan says, I understand that. Corey? Herman says, I'm also thinking about joining Patreon, making sure my cash flow is straight before I can. I was thinking of $20 a month for that personal or group help if writing or artwork. Well, awesome. I mean, most important thing is making sure your money situation is straight. But the other thing I have found, there's a lot of Patreons that I am a member of, and some of them, like, I'll just sign up for the lowest tier just because I want to support them. Sometimes there's people, if I want to see what they're doing or interact with them more, I may sign up at a higher tier and just do that for a couple of months. And I will tell you that I can't speak for other creators, but my feeling towards Patreon is that I never want people to feel bad when they unsubscribe. I want people to feel that I appreciate them for whatever support they want to give. So sometimes I've had people that have joined at a higher tier, and I'm working with them a little bit more closely on whatever they're working on. And then if they're only on for a month or 2 months at the higher tier, and then they cancel or they drop down to a lower tier, like, it's not like a high pressure sales thing. It's more sort of, it's what the word implies. Patreon implies the person is being a patron of the art. So they're supporting the creator, but I want people to feel like they're getting something for that support. So if there's ways that I can be helpful to them, then I try to go for that. So, definitely look at it more as, if there's something where you wanted to be on a Patreon and you only wanted, if there's a tier that you wanted access to, you only were able to do it for like a month or two. Don't feel like if your financial situation changed, like you need to stay at that tier or feel bad about dropping or canceling. It's a fluid thing. And I've had people that have joined, unsubscribed, and then a few months later joined again. And it's one of the things where they pledge support when they can. That's another way to look at it. Now, Paul, back to the kids conversation. Paul says, Oprah conversation with is my goal with my kids. Drugs is my biggest fear for them. I remember the only conversation my dad had with me when I went away to college was he was just sort of like, stay away from drugs. Don't get on anything, which, to be fair, in college, there's a lot of drugs around. I would say that I was lucky in that, as a student athlete on scholarship, they did regular drug testing. So it was not an option for me, even if I wanted to, because it's not like I'm going to be going out and getting, I'm trying to think of what some people, like getting like urine sample, like getting pee so that I can get a clean drug test. I'm not going to be doing all that. I'm just like, look, I'm a student athlete. I'm going to go. I want to compete in my sport. it kept me out of trouble. But I mean, in this day and age, especially with like fentanyl out there and like all kinds of drugs that people wouldn't necessarily even think are going to be that bad, being laced, kids don't know what they're getting these days. So, I mean, yeah, that is, to me, that is super scary, and I get that, and I don't blame you. I would be terrified. That's completely unhelpful. I'm sorry. I mean, I know you weren't asking it like a question, like what do I think? It was more of a conversation. But I think about that, and I realize I have nothing to add to that is useful, because I would find that completely terrifying too. I mean, I'm afraid of that for my nephew. I'm afraid of that for a lot of young kids. Dylan says, totally, Corey. Some of the conversations I had with my dad started due to me going to ask mom to tell my dad. I went to my mom to tell my dad I'm gay. Well, you know what? I mean, sometimes when you know that one parent's going to handle difficult conversations better than the other, I mean, that's kind of the smart move. Um, being able to go to one parent and have them break the news to the other, and then just trying to create a safer situation to have a deep conversation. So let's see here. Dylan says, I don't have kids, but drugs is one of my biggest fears since me and my family members have a history of drug use. I mean, and it's strange because I mean, it seems like things are a lot more lethal now, and it's a lot more dangerous now. Because in the early 2000s, I mean, like, it wasn't like there was anybody that I knew that was like doing heroin or anything. It was all just like weed and speed, well, crystal meth is obviously another big. I think that was the thing that more people were afraid of, because I think heroin. I don't know how popular heroin was in the early 2000s, but I mean, honestly, from my perspective, it was like heroin. That's a white people's drug. I ain't mess with that. But meth was definitely something that I saw take a toll on some people. That got out of control. I never really had an interest in messing with coke, and I knew people that other people that did. I mean, I was honestly the few times that I dabbled. The main thing is that I don't really feel like I need my conscience is weird enough without needing to alter it. My only experience with substances that I actually said, "Oh wow, I need to be careful about this," was mushrooms, because I tried it and I enjoyed it so much that I was like, wow, I could see myself doing this every weekend. And the minute I thought that, I was like, yeah, I want to be real careful about this. So I've been very, kind of hands offish with that. But that's the only thing I ever did that I genuinely enjoyed. Other than that, anything I've dabbled, I was just like, you know what, I'm fine. You know what, I'll have a glass of wine. I'm good. Let's see here. Paul says, I always thought hell would be a Chuck E. Cheese, or maybe a Chuck E. Cheese that's at the center of the earth. Well, I mean, I still haven't seen Five Nights at Freddy's, which, you know what? I didn't know that it was based on a book series. And I didn't know that the book series was like a young adult book series. So it was a kid's horror. I don't know if it's like a Goosebumps level, or whether it's like a serious, like a Hunger Games type, more intense. But, you know, I think maybe, who knows? I don't know if you've seen Five Nights at Freddy's, Paul, but that might be the most terrifying horror movie for you as well. Let's see here. And Paul sends some hugs to Dylan, and Corey also says, "I'm glad you had those relationships, Dylan." Yeah, I'm very happy that you had a relationship with your mom and your dad where you could sit down and have conversations like that and communicate as a family. So glad to hear it. Yes, Dylan says hugs as well. It's a big hug fest, everybody. We're starting off the year with so much love. I am loving the love. This is what the internet should be. Just people telling how happy they are for each other. That's, wow, what would be a better place? James cosigns, secretary is great. Yes, definitely recommend that. Let's see here. Herman says, I work mostly digital, but I bought a lot of trad equipment, black inks, white acrylics, gel, medium, expensive brushes, the whole works. But definitely trying to focus on writing this year for now. Yeah, I kind of as well. I'm in the same boat in that what's stopping me from starting my next comic is that I have the whole thing outlined, but the actual page to page pacing still needs a lot of tweaking and adjusting of plot points. So I'm kind of doing the same thing. And I want to get back to doing more traditional work. Like I do a lot of figure drawing, as you guys have heard me go on and on about for years, but I haven't really spent much time painting traditional figures. And I want to get back to painting. I miss it. It's been a really long time. Paul says, ding, 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 secretary added to list. Hell, I want to go back and rewatch that. I haven't seen that in ages. I love it. I have the DVD. I'm sure it's summer streaming now. I don't need to go and dig out my DVDs, but let's see here. Jim, back to the AMAs. It says, for those of us planning a vacation in Upland this spring, can you recommend any really good restaurants? Did you have a go-to place? Oh yeah, the Taco Bell on Mountain. That was my spot. And also the Sizzler on not on Mountain, the Taco Bell on Foothill Boulevard, as well as the Sizzler on Foothill Boulevard, which is no longer there anymore. There is a great sushi restaurant, and I'm not sure if they're still open, but across the street from Upland High School, there is an excellent sushi restaurant. Those would probably be my go-tos for that area. I mean, obviously, the food landscape has changed a lot since I was in high school. Chipotle didn't even exist because Chipotle would be my go-to now. Corey says, regarding conversations, he says, they're only hard and awkward if they're infrequent. If it's just part of everyday living, then conversations happen when questions arise. No big deal. See, now that right there, you're a good man, Charlie Brown. You're a good man, Corey Kerr. Yeah, the idea of like regular and open communication, about just everything. That, I mean, I will tell you that I definitely had parents that did not have. See, what's interesting is my parents were open if I had questions. My family didn't really talk and have deep talks about stuff all the time, but my parents didn't really restrict the content that I was allowed to watch, both in terms of violence or sex. But they were also, if I turned to them at any point and said, hey, what do you think about this? Why did this happen? I think this is weird. This upsets me. This excites me. Whatever. They were completely open to having those conversations. I'll tell you, you didn't ask, but one of the most awkward moments in my life was the if you've ever seen the movie Blue Orchid, which is really just about a woman on kind of a sexual escapade of self-discovery. My mom had rented it. It's an NC-17 movie, and we were watching that together. And at a certain point, I'm just like, this is just like I'm like, in my mind, I didn't say anything. But this goes to the point that with Corey it seems like you would probably actually have a conversation about like the fact that you would be like, this would be a point of conversation. But at one point, I'm watching the movie and in my mind, I'm thinking, really, Mom, we're watching this together? Like, I'm like, I want to see this, but you could have just left the DVD. You could have just left this was before DVDs. You could have just left the VHS and I could watch it by myself after you go to bed, or you could watch it upstairs and leave it for me later. I'm like, we don't need to watch this together. I mean, it was like Angel Heart level of an explicit movie. I mean, that can tell you why I draw and paint some of the weird stuff that I do. So maybe I am a little bit messed up, but still, like I said, great overall, great, pretty good relationship. But yeah, Corey, I'm very impressed by that tenor of just having open conversations all the time, so that things aren't a big deal, even if they are, maybe some interesting subjects. Hang on, got a cough. So Paul says, had the drugs talk with my 13-year-old the other day. Then a few days later, her friend told me, I'm not the one you have to worry about. Well, I mean, at least they're straightforward. Wow. Yeah, Paul says, yes, right on, Corey. You have to build rapport in the mundane moments. So you can be there for the big moments. Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I think it's interesting the fact of having the conversation that we're having right now. I mean, because I think that there are also a lot of people who maybe new parents or people that are thinking about having parents, and there's definitely enough people out there who grew up without any conversation at all with their parents. Like nothing was spoken about. Everything was hush hush. Kids are supposed to be seen or not heard. And I think hearing other people talking about the types of conversations that people should be having with their kids and the way that she should interact with their kids. Because again, I mean, none of this stuff comes with an instruction manual. Everyone's figuring it out as they go. And I think hearing other people just having these conversations is helpful, or maybe encouraging for people that are maybe afraid of having kids or afraid of what's going to be like or what kind of parents they're going to be. So no, it's good. I'm glad we're talking about this. James says it's been a while since I've painted with acrylic, watercolor, or acrylic. And it's funny because the way that I ended up moving to acrylic is I started out in high school using watercolor because it's a cheap and easy available medium, but it takes so long to build up rich, vibrant colors. You kind of have to lay a base and then let it dry and then build up. And no one ever showed me how to use a blow dryer to help it speed up drying times. But one day I tried acrylic and I realized, if I need it to be translucent, I can water it down like watercolor and then just use it straight from the tube when I need things to be bold and thick. Bold and thick. I think that's what we'll name this live stream. No, it would go along with the themes of some of the stuff we're talking about. No, and also that was before I started using medium to thin my paints as opposed to water. But yeah, both of them were pretty handy in terms of doing traditional media. And yes, I miss it and need to get back to it. And Herman says, in terms of Patreons, I won't feel bad if I have to unsubscribe. He said, bro, I'm paying $700 a month for a school degree that I haven't used yet. I feel like I deserve something for me, just trying to make it possible. No, I get that. Wow. And, school is expensive as hell. Well, I hope that you're able to get some use out of that degree too, soon. It is challenging, particularly when we have a world where there's so many different resources around us that from YouTube videos to all kinds of courses and all sorts of ways to get information. It's tough. It's challenging. School is way more expensive than it was when I was in there, and I was on a scholarship. I still had to pay room and board, but my tuition and books were at least covered. So that helped. That took some of the bite out of it. But yeah, education prices have just been crazy. Let's see here. Herman says, I feel like this would be a good opportunity, so that's why I'm buying supplies. I'll be practicing in conjunction with the digital work. So more of a tradigital style. Well, you know what? I mean, hey, there's guys like comic creators like Ashley Wood or Dave McKean who very much blend the digital and the traditional. I think you can get some really interesting results by, taking the traditional artwork, bringing it into the computer, manipulating it, sometimes printing it back out, doing more manipulations and scanning it back in. To the point where it begins to blur. Yeah. Paul says Tradigital. First time seeing that. I like it. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I sub to that. All right. We're going to get to these last couple of comments. I'm going to put the stylus down. I think we're done drawing for today. I'm just going to try and get through these last couple of comments here. We're going to wrap it up for the day. Monumental Comics says, don't you do it. Now, I apologize. It's taking me so long to get to the comments, so I'm behind whatever it was. I've forgotten what I was saying that I'm not supposed to do. I probably did it. Let's see here. James says, FNAF was based on a game series. Or I thought, Five Nights at Freddy was based on a game series. You know what? Maybe it was a video game. I thought that it was a kid's book, but maybe it was a video game. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be talking out of my ass. I will have to check that later and perhaps publish a retraction. But you may well be right that it was a video game and not a young adult book series. Or maybe they made a book series after the video game was successful. I cannot remember. I do not know. I'm iffy on that. And Paul says, if sugar was a drug, I am an addict. Yeah, I am constantly trying to fight. I prefer more of like sugary, like candy, like gummy bears and nerds and you know, and stuff like that, and ice cream as opposed to chocolate. But yeah, sugar. I try to cut back. Like I let myself try to only have like a Coke maybe a couple of times a week. You know, maybe on the weekends if we're eating out. That's why I try to reserve soft drinks for when we're eating out, or something like that. A quote unquote special occasion, as opposed to just having it all the time. But it's an uphill battle. And Herman says to Paul, yeah, I was calling it that Tradigital in my art college days because I was always mixed medium, work on paper, then scan it in, and work on top in Photoshop. But Rebelle is my go-to now. I've heard great things about Rebelle. I have not tried it. This is me now. I have heard great things about Rebelle. Haven't tried it yet. I'm still, the thing about Procreate is just it fits my workflow. And it doesn't mean that there aren't better tools out there. I know a lot of comic creators swear by Clip Studio Paint, but I feel like you could spend forever just trying and learning new apps. And I'm like, at a certain point, you just got to get a toolbox, a set of tools, and just go. So right now, I'm in go phase. But I do hear great things about Rebelle. Let's see here. Dylan says, LOL, Paul. Same to James. Paul says, there's a ton of Five Nights at Freddy music. My daughter loved it for a while. It actually isn't too bad. You know what? I hadn't heard anything about the music at all. I'll have to check that out as well. I mean, honestly, I still haven't even seen the movie. So too many things to see, not enough hours in the day. And Jim says, last question. Leanne wants to know if you've ever been to Vince's Spaghetti. I feel like I have. I'm trying to think. Is that the one that's in Claremont? I want to say that I have. There was another place in Upland called Graziano's, and I can't remember if Vince's Spaghetti is the place that replaced Graziano's, or if Vince's Spaghetti is the place I'm thinking of that's in Claremont. But I want to say that I have. I mean, mind you, even though I grew up in Upland, and I still go back, several times throughout the year, honestly, it's like after high school, my memory of like the ins and outs, like I am not the guy to ask for a travel log, because also a lot of the cool things to do there didn't really happen until after I moved away. Like the downtown area, like 2nd Street is like a strip that's sort of like a small, like, bunch of bars and restaurants, and there were always small businesses. It's like a cute little boutique downtown with a gazebo, kind of like the city center. It's like the library and the city hall, then tons of shops. But maybe a decade after I moved away, they started opening more bars down there and kind of revitalizing it as kind of like a downtown, like night scene, evening scene. Better restaurants, better drinking, like social drinking. It was a good spot. So, yeah, a lot of the cool stuff to do around there happened after I left. And more often than not, when I went back to visit my friends for like, just nights out, we'd go to like places in Rancho Cucamonga or, other parts of town, other parts of surrounding areas and nearby cities where we would go just hit a bar. And honestly, a lot my friends really they like dive bars. It got to the point where they got pissed at me because I would just bring my sketchbook wherever we went because I'm like, look, other than hanging out with you guys, there's nobody here I want to talk to. There was nobody that I wanted to hit on or pick up on. And I was like, I'm just gonna sketch and hang out with you guys and drink and keep you guys company while you guys hit on whatever you want to hit on. Let's see here. Herman says, I want to finish something, maybe a graphic novel. I have tons of small stories that need to flesh out, trying to figure out your outlining or how to go about it. Well, first off, I will tell you, do as I say, not as I do. My first book I published was a full-on graphic novel. Morning Star was an 8-issue miniseries. The next thing I'm doing is another 8-issue miniseries. I keep wanting to get to just writing standalone single comics. If you can pick one short story, or like, bet what's better is like an 8-page story, and you could do like maybe 2 or 3 of those and put them in like a single comic. But just, I honestly feel like it's so much easier to start out with a single standalone comic and then do another single standalone comic and then do another, and then you get 4 of them and you put them together in a book, a comic, actual anthology that's like graphic novel size. I think that's way easier than trying to write a graphic novel. My brain keeps thinking of stuff in longer, ambitious forms, but I would say it really comes down to, you start with one thing. What's the idea? And then your second thing is actually 3 things. What's your beginning? What's your middle? What's your end? Once you know that, those points, like the main idea, and then those 3 elements, then it's just simply a matter of creating a numbered list for your page count. So if it's an 8-page story, you just make a list of 8 points. And then you just say, what happens on page 1? What happens on page 2? What happens on page 3? And you try to keep it down to like 1, maybe 2 sentences per, really for a whole page. Well, yeah, you can do 1 to 2 sentences to describe what happens in the story on each page. Once you do that, then it's just a matter of taking each page breakdown and then breaking that down into panels. So it's like that whole thing, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. Yeah, just break it down into very small, simple bites, and then use the idea of breaking it down to just 1 sentence or 2 sentences to describe what happens on a page. Because think about it. I don't want you to do a whole graphic novel, but if you were doing a 100-page graphic novel, making a list that is 100 bullet points, and all you have to do is just write 100 sentences, that is a lot less. It's a lot less intimidating than the idea of just saying, I'm going to write a 100-page graphic novel. You just say the words 100-page graphic novel, and it feels like a whole big project. But just 100 sentences, it's doable. Now, if you break that down to I'm just doing a single comic, if it's a 24-page comic, you can write 24 sentences. You could do it in an hour if you needed to. So, so that's why I like the idea of just breaking it down to like a sentence per page in terms of description, and then going in and detailing, breaking that sentence down into actual panels to work out the details. Let's see here. Dylan says, Paul, I enjoy the Five Nights at Freddy's song, one song by the Living Tombstone. All right, I'm gonna have to check out this soundtrack. This sounds like everyone's popping off on the Five Nights at Freddy. Paul says, hey, you Cali folk, is the diner that got robbed in Pulp Fiction an actual place? Where is it? And Jim says, yes, but it's closed. I think it was in Torrance. I have never been there, but I have also heard of that restaurant. I want to say that at one point I drove past the location after it was closed, just as kind of a fun, like somebody showing me, oh, hey, this was the restaurant in Pulp Fiction. Let's see here. Herman says, laughing my ass off. He said, Jeremy, he says, was like, the movie was nasty. Oh, Blue Orchid. Yes, the movie was nasty. It says, yeah, I used to look straight ahead and avoid eye contact with my folks. Okay, so you had the experience of watching Blue Orchid with your fam, with your folks too. Yeah, my folks were not shy about watching content that was not appropriate for kids around me and my brothers, and they would just be like, it's almost like they dared us to say, "What? You got a question? You want to know about something? Because we'll tell you. Whatever the movie didn't show you, we'll tell you." So they, yeah, it's crazy. All right, let me get caught up here on the comments, and we're gonna wrap it up here. We're gonna bring this stream in for a landing. Dylan says, I remember one time there was an adult scene and my mom tried to cover my eyes. The scene was almost over and she went, ugh, and rolled her eyes. Yep, you got to be quick on that. Well, plus it means they probably didn't linger. Herman also says, laughing my ass off. And Dylan says, children should be seen and not heard. Angers me so much. Yeah, well, I mean, that's fortunately, by the time I was a kid, parents were kind of coming out of that era. But the kids who were people who were coming up as kids in the 50s and 60s, so, you know, maybe not my parents' generation, but maybe like the generation just after that, those kids, I think, were still growing up with people. There were kids whose parents were a World War II generation and were just, you know, yeah, they took no gruff. They didn't explain anything to you. They were not afraid to give a kid a backhand if they just looked at them funny. I mean, and that is a broad generalization. I think in any generation, unfortunately, including now, you've got parents that were not emotionally equipped to be parents and are physically and emotionally abusive. And even going back then, you still had parents who were thoughtful, caring, philosophical, like Corey and Paul mentioned, were willing to sit down and have deep conversations on a regular basis and be open with kids. You know, I think that parenting has run the gamut, has run the spectrum throughout the course of human history. But I do think that as we've gotten to this modern era, we've moved more towards just trying to talk. And I think that that's good for, I think, especially for parenting relationships, but for all relationships, you know, open conversation, I think, is just one of the healthiest things out there. Paul did a quick Google for us. Thank you. He says the diner where Pumpkin and Bunny met in Pulp Fiction is the Hawthorne Grill. According to LA Magazine, it was closed and abandoned during the filming of the movie. So, yeah. Jim says, there you go. It says the Good Burger hamburger stand from the Good Burger hamburger stand from the movie. Good Burger is right around the corner from my house. Nice. And Paul says, nice drawing. Thanks for the stream. Yeah, I got a little bit done with these. I think I actually really do want to try and buckle down and finish this maybe during the week so that I can move on to something new. Hopefully I'll have a little time, and then I'll still show you guys what the finished piece is. Dylan says, I think Five Nights at Freddy was a video game, but then moved to books and other media. So you know what? That might be where I was mistaken. I may have seen the books instead of the video game and thought that the movie came from the books, but I guess it was a video game first. So, all right. Thank you for clearing that up. Dylan says, did anybody hear about the Harley Quinn fart kink comic? Paul's like, fart kink? No, I have not heard of that. Dylan says, my mom used to live in Cucamonga my mom's family used to live in Cucamonga back in the 60s. Yeah, Cucamonga is not far from where I grew up. It's definitely part of the Inland Empire, which was not even called the Inland Empire back. It was called the Inland. It was called the Inland Valley. And then when they they start calling it the Inland Empire. I know a lot of people turn like, Empire? Empire? It ain't no empire. So we thought it was, urban. The county was trying to get snotty about it. But Paul says, I'm looking at a map of LA. Could look at this for hours. Yeah, I mean, and before film production began running away from LA, there were tons of movies you could look at and look at all the different places in LA where things were shot. Although also tons of stuff that were just shot on backlots. Herman says, yeah, the anthology seems like a better deal. Then eventually I would like to make the book interactive, then do like a 2-minute animation similar to G.I. Joe commercials, but writing is the focus. Yeah, I will tell you this. I've spent most of my life learning how to draw, and I'm still working on getting better. The thing that I am learning is that it's not that writing is harder. It's just scarier because there's not as many people sitting down and telling you clear steps to do. But in the same way that I got better by working in a sketchbook every day, one of the best things to do for writing is to write a little bit every day. That's why I think people who journal or writers, journaling, I think has played a healthy part in a lot of writers' practices, is the idea of not necessarily having to write a big masterpiece of fiction or sit down and write for 4 hours a day, but to just, open a Word document or have a journal and just say, all right, I'm just going to write some stuff for like 5 or 10 minutes every day. The act of writing every day does the same thing to your brain that drawing every day does. It slowly builds the muscle. So the biggest advice I can give you, and this is, again, things that I struggle to do. I'm not telling you, oh, I'm doing this and this is the right way to do it. I'm saying I have tried to get into the practice of writing for like 20 minutes every day. And I've seen progress when I do it, but I've also fallen off and had times where schedule has kept me from being able to stick with it. When you do it for a little bit every day, you will see better benefits than trying to carve out big chunks of time to write. And what happens is you develop the muscle to be able to just start writing on a regular basis, because that's the hardest part, is sitting down and getting yourself started. So yeah, just try and just do a little bit of writing every day, and you'll see that over time, you're like, okay, I can do this. It's not scary. It's not a big deal. I'm just going to roll in. So Herman says, thanks for the chat. Y'all have a good one. Till next stream. Peace. Good to see you. Yeah, thank you, Herman. I appreciate that. Dylan says, my parents were boomers. They grew up in that phase. Well, I'm glad they were still able to, have good conversations with you and connect with you. James says, David Lynch made a movie entitled Inland Empire, and he said it's weird, but it's worth a look. Well, hell, everything Lynch makes is weird, but yeah, I know. I remember when that movie came out. I never got around to seeing it, so I need to go back. I'm gonna put that on my list. Dylan says, this is an empire. Yeah, this ain't Star Wars. Oh, and Corey says, and a great tip, because Corey's walking the walk. He says, or publish first draft chapters often. It's freeing. Yeah, and that's one of the things I plan to do with my next comic, is I plan to do it as a web comic so I can get feedback from people online before I actually go to print. So yeah, definitely putting work out there to get criticism can be scary if you're afraid of people saying things about your work that's going to upset you. But healthy criticism, or honestly, people just saying, I get this, or I don't understand that. So not attacking you, but just hearing where people resonate or are confused with the story, very, very helpful for you in terms of just realizing, oh, this is what I need to clarify. This is where the story is too slow. This is where I need to speed up. All of those things help from what Corey said in terms of putting your work out there and giving people a chance to interact with it. Dylan says, my mom was way better with conversations, but my dad wasn't the best at it. Sometimes he got heated. Well, I mean, but again, the fact that you were able to go to your mom and your mom was able to help talk with your dad, I'm glad that at least you had that. But, as long as you had one parent that you could go to and talk about with stuff, that's as Corey and Paul can attest to, from the parenting side, it's good that someone's there. So it's better than having two parents that just shut down. So but like you said, they were, grew up in that generation. We're moving into a more conversational realm. Hopefully things are moving better. All right, I'm really starting to ramble. I'm getting loopy. I've been talking for a long time. I need to wrap it up. Corey says yes, web comics. I'm not sure what first what web comics FTW. I don't even know what FTW stands for. Dylan says, I really love Corey's idea of posting a few panels of your comic after you finish that set of panels. Yes, because Corey is now posting a new webcomic, a work in progress. Oh, is FTW a form of first draft? Oh, for the win. FTW for the win. Dude, see, I'm not hip on the lingo. I'm not one of the cool kids, but I like to hang out with the cool kids at the back of the bus. All right, guys. Dylan says, yeah, I'm glad I had one parent that was emotionally and mentally mature and healthy. Well, yes, I'm happy for that for you as well. All right, guys. On that note, we've had a really great session. It was great to get back with you guys, to catch up, to touch base. I'm looking forward to sharing new stuff in the future. I'm going to try and finish up that this illustration I've been working on forever. But hit that like button. If you're new to the stream, hit that subscribe button. If there's somebody you know who you think would enjoy these conversations, hit that share button. Forward it to them. Okay. And on that note, if you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books for free digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It is a retelling of Lucifer's Fall from Heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8, the conclusion to the story. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, scroll down to flip throughs, there is a playlist where you can see book flip throughs of all of these, see what's inside before you pick them up. All right, guys, again, thank you so much. It's great to see you. I appreciate you all. Happy New Year. Let's go out there and have a badass 2025. I can't keep stuff straight. Badass 2025. That's it for now. Go be creative.